So as an Agile coach, what I mostly do is work with teams and help them learn about Agile and help to demystify this concept of what it means to behave in an Agile way. What is business agility or operating with agility? Agile is, of course, it comes out of, or it's made most popular by software development projects, product development in software companies, and it's also been applied to a large extent to project management, because it's a lot of good fit. There's a lot of strong overlap. And it also happens to be that those are the areas that need to behave with the most agility. But what we're learning is, at least in the industry it seems, that a lot of places need to behave with agility. And marketing has started to explore what does it mean to apply Agile concepts to marketing. There's a thing called the Agile Marketing, Agile Marketing Manifesto. In human resources, in HR where I'm working now, there's a lot of talk about HR agility and what are the implications for making HR more agile. So what I will talk about today is about basically trying to demystify Agile and help you to get some exposure to it and to start to build up your body of experience and skills. But that's the stuff I want to talk about later. I'll do my thing because we're talking about this cool project and this idea of building something. And that's actually, there's a strong tie-in to Agile, right? So do you mind if I just ask some more questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so one of the questions I have is the genesis of this project. I think you said that it came from a team member, or sorry, a club member.
Yeah.
And people who are interested in learning the skills associated with this project would just basically volunteer. That's a great way to start for agility. That's actually a great way to behave with agility. Okay. One of the ideas behind Agile is that you work in an iterative and incremental fashion, right? And so the end product here is a smart mirror. Or maybe even you would consider that the end product would be a smart mirror with the software loaded onto it that a customer can use in their bathroom, right? Like somebody can actually use it and it's got all the features and everything. But I wonder if you could perhaps conceive of something that is
like a whole list of features you want.
Yeah, a whole list of features that would go into this this smart mirror. I mean, just as a mental exercise, and since you're at the board with a white marker, what are some things that if this was your smart mirror, what would you want it to do for you?
So at the top right, you can do traffic to work. Since Google tracks that now, it'll be like, oh, it'll take you 15 minutes in current traffic conditions to get to work.
Oh, look, and that whiteboard marker
It's much better.
primo whiteboard marker. That's a professor's whiteboard marker. It's not one of the junky ones left in the tray. All right, so here's an example of a feature, traffic to work. What's another example of a feature?
I would want it to talk to my phone, to sync to my phone via Bluetooth, and display things like my calendar for the day, my to-do list, if I have any major notifications.
What's another your subgroup? Another feature, calendar.
Maybe you could have updates on your interest, such as, like for Jared maybe, if a Supreme drop comes out, you see the notification on your phone. That's kind of like a feature.
It's like an RSS feed, but
Yeah.
If we're talking about Jaren's interest, we can put the
oh my god.
current price of Ethereum.
So like stocks or crypto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then weather, obviously.
So then there's also like on and off, brightness of the screen, charging.
Oh yeah, like settings.
Like the ability to do these things. Should be able to access the settings. Should be able to turn it on and off.
Yeah, that's actually, so when I looked at the kind of like the build log for it, the issue with these smart mirrors is that there's no touch screen. So if you want to configure anything, you'd have to plug in your USB mic or mouse and keyboard into it, and then like edit it like through command line or something like that. So
Some other people made it link up with an app they created on their Android phone, so they can edit it from there.
oh, that's another way too. Voice commands.
Yeah, like Siri.
That'd be pretty difficult, I think, wouldn't it?
I'm curious because like then you'd have to build in like a voice recognition engine,
Yeah.
and I don't know if there's probably open source ones though. So that could be possible.
So when you start thinking about the features that could possibly be in the smart mirror, like the list gets really long, right?
Yeah.
All right. So one of the things that we talk about, it's not my opinion, it's not something I invented, it's just something we talk about in the Agile space, is the minimum viable product. Have you ever heard of that concept, the MVP? Basically, it's the simplest thing that would possibly work that people would buy. What are some, would the smart mirror have to have all of these features in order for somebody to buy it?
No.
What's an example of absolute minimum?
Time.
Okay, it should have a clock on it.
Really good at that.
All right, so, and the ability to turn it on, that's probably a, what if it always just stays on?
I think it's always on.
It's just always on.
Yeah.
Does it have a battery then, or is it?
It's plugged into like so the Raspberry Pi is plugged into a wall socket.
So
If
it
it's
runs
always
off walls?
on, how bright is it?
There's a lot of
Because,
examples.
You turn it off at night, or is it?
yeah, if you could turn it off at night, it would be better.
But then like, how would you
Or dim the
control it?
screen.
You'd have to control it by either phone, voice, or keyboard.
Or you only turn it on when you walk up to it.
But how does it
Like
recognize
time, you know, like if it's AM,
Or do we know where it's
PM.
Well, then that means you can't use it at night, because then you just kind of lock it into the time slot.
Push a button,
Hmm?
push a button.
Photo sensor? Turns on,
Motion sensor.
motion sensor, like you're standing in front of it, it knows you're standing in front of it. So, is it possible to conceive of a minimum set of features that this smart mirror would have? Is it,
But what's necessary is fairly subjective. Like, I wouldn't really care about what time it is, personally, if I have to look in the mirror.
so this is, that's right. And this is one of the basic elements of what it means to be Agile. All right, you build something that has something, that you can test with customers in the marketplace. You put a basic set of features into your product, and then try to sell it. And if your customers will buy it, then you know that you've got something. If customers won't buy it, then you have to iterate on it. You have to change it. All right, so Agile is iterating or changing or adapting the product. So another thing is that it's incremental in that after the first iteration and you sell it to some customers, you've got happy customers, hopefully. You're aiming for happy customers. Then you add another feature. That's an increment on the original product. So you build your first product and then you add an increment and it gets bigger and changes and adapts over time. So your list of 100 features, you could start with a list of 3 basic ones, and then you add a 4th one, then add a 5th one, add a 6th one, add a 7th one. So that's basic. That's a basic definition of Agile: iterative and incremental product development.
And that builds brands.
Tell me about that.
Because generation by generation. So like, for example, the iPhone. First iPhone came out, didn't have crazy facial features like it is now, for example. I don't know, it's just,
It doesn't have.
Yeah,
The
it
first
doesn't
one
give-
didn't have Apple Pay,
Yeah.
right? Payment processing.
yeah, it doesn't give the features that it gives now. So generation by generation, it kind of builds a brand and it kind of becomes a trend for people to buy because it's been a long time for Apple to develop these phones. And yeah, it builds a brand
Yeah.
over time.
And something that Apple is very well known for is putting the customer or the user of their system right at the center of their design, right? User-centered design is what they call it. Another way that you can also look at the features in our feature list is there's a user for those features, right? And you want to. It's going to be very popular. Thank you. So think about the user of the weather feature, all right? Who is the user of the weather feature? Who would like to use a weather feature on their smart mirror? All right. Tell me why. Why is that useful to you as a feature?
Well, I would like to know if I have to wear a coat or not before leaving the house, like if it's going to rain later in the day. It doesn't matter if it's sunny now in California, it can change from sunny to raining in like 2 hours.
You jump up there and put it. Yes, use the Primo marker. Have you guys ever seen this format as a type of user? I want some feature so that I get some value or benefit. Have you ever seen that basic formula? I mean, this is a concept called a user story. User stories are a very simple technique for putting users at the center of what you're building. So, as a user of the weather feature, I want to know the temperature, for the highs and lows of the forecast for today, so that I can decide whether to wear a jacket. So, what this concept does, number one, is it puts users at the center of your. I got 2 more minutes before I get to jump into what all the Agile stuff. This puts users at the center of your design, and it also gives you the value for those users so that you can start to think about priorities. You can say, based on this value, being able to decide whether I'm going to wear a jacket or not, that value that intrinsic value is more useful to our product, for example, than I'd like to use my smartphone to control all the devices. I'd like to use my smart mirror to control all the devices in my house. Maybe more complicated, maybe more beneficial, but you can start to compare, usefulness or intrinsic importance of things, of the features. Anyway, this is just one of these kind of techniques that comes out of trying to behave in a more agile way. So here, let me jump in and.
You need a computer?
No, I'm good. I don't think I need a computer. Okay. Let me give you since my talk is officially starting now. Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for having me. My name is David. I work for IBM. Okay. What I hope to do is go through the basics of Agile in a very short order and then play a game that I call Stump the Chump, which is an opportunity for you to just ask whatever questions come to mind. Thanks for coming. Because I've been around this Agile stuff, I am enthusiastic and I just talk about it, and sometimes the best content just kind of comes up when it's just off the cuff. So I want to give you opportunities to ask and make sure that this is really valuable for you. So a bit of a history lesson. Agile is relatively new, but not that new. It's probably Agile is probably older than some of us in this room. The Agile Manifesto, which sort of was the document that clarified or codified the word Agile as associated with a way of thinking about working, that was signed in 2001. So the Agile Manifesto, if you want to search for it, agilemanifesto.org, it's a very basic document that says we have a certain set of values and principles that underlie the way that we want to work, and that's it. Anybody else who agrees with that, you can become a signatory. At least up until a few years ago, you could still become a signatory of the Agile Manifesto. They may have archived that at this point, but to my knowledge, the Ward Cunningham, the founder of the wiki, he took care of that website himself and would process every request to be a signatory. So maybe he's still at that. But I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't have time for that either. So anyway, like Agile is still relatively new. That the people who founded and came up with these concepts are still around and you know, giving very useful information to the world. Okay, so the Agile Manifesto says that in the course of trying to build better software and teach other people how to do it, they've come to value certain things. They say that individuals and interactions are more valuable than processes and tools. That working software is more valuable than comprehensive documentation. It says customer collaboration is more valuable than comprehensive documentation. And that, what was the other one? I printed it out so I wouldn't forget. Responding to change is more valuable than following a plan. So, what does it mean that responding to change is more valuable than following a plan? Well, when Agile came about, it was really popular to develop software in a certain way, which led to a lot of failure. And people couldn't believe that software was being developed that way. Today, I think you would probably be astonished that software was ever developed this other way. So the basic idea was that you would spend a period of time gathering a bunch of requirements, and you would survey all your customers, find out the end users of the product, and you would gather all of their requirements, and then document it and put it in a big binder. And then after the requirements phase, there was an analysis phase where you would analyze all those requirements, figure out how you would meet the requirements, put them into architecture diagrams and models, elaborate models, and basically how the entire system was going to work, and you would construct that. And once the analysis of the requirements was complete, you would start to build it, right? Maybe a design is another component of that. But then the next phase would be writing the actual code. And then after you write the actual code, you test it all. And then after you test the code, you deliver it. Okay. The reason why I drew it down like this is because if you plot this out on a chart about time, time going into the future, then the amount of work that you have to do is, there's hundreds of things here, and then 90 things here, and 50 things, and all the way down to the end where you have 0 left, right? That's what it looks like on a Gantt chart. This style of delivery is also referred to as waterfall, because basically once you get to the next stage or phase in your delivery, you basically just don't go back to the stage before it. So let me ask you, you're all intelligent people, what is the risk of finding a bug at this stage in the overall cycle? Like if you find a critical fault in assumptions, what happens?
You mean like a change in requirements?
Yeah, like changing requirements. If you identify a change late in the game, then what happens?
It starts over.
Yeah, you got to start over. Right. And let's say that this is a year and a half into your project, and the people who gathered all the requirements have moved on to another project. They're not on your project anymore. Then what do you do? It's a dilemma. Fill in the gap. Yeah, it's a dilemma. So this model is very inefficient for things where requirements are changing quickly, where the marketplace is changing quickly. This model is also very inefficient if feedback is useful, right? This model is actually pretty good if you have zero change. Let's say you're building the Bay Bridge, right? You do a lot of requirements gathering. You know point A and point B of the bridge. You analyze all the materials. You know, engineers code out exactly what the materials need to be. They hammer out all the details of what they're going to build the bridge out of before they first, start pouring concrete and, fabricating the cables and all the other stuff that they do. All right. So the cost of change in building a bridge is incredibly high. Whereas in software development, and the other factor is cost of change is very high, and the criticality of feedback is low. You get the feedback all up front. All right. So if you build software in that way, you're doomed for having huge cost overruns and features that you put in the product that nobody ever needs or wants. But you did it anyway because you had to ask for it up at the beginning because that was the only chance you had. So that was the environment in which Agile came about, was software projects were being run that way over and over and over again, huge software projects. And that model has pretty much gone the way of the dinosaur as far as I can tell. If you guys know differently, please inform me. The Agile approach, and I'm going to make this really quick so you can ask questions. The basic framework for Agile, I'm going to do it in a 4-box quadrant because this is what all consultants do. If you come across a consultant in your life that doesn't have a 4-box quadrant model, they don't know what they're talking about. They're not real. I'm joking. Okay, this is the basic model. Plan, act, reflect, refine. Okay, it follows in a cycle like this. Okay, you plan some act. You plan what you want to do. You plan the feature of your smart mirror. You build an increment of the smart mirror. You analyze the results. All right, you reflect on how did we do it. What were our results? Gather some data. Survey your customers, get some input, and then you go back to the original notions and you refine your plan. That's all there is. So this notion of having like a 4-step cycle, this isn't just like what I came up with. I mean, these words may be something that that I use to describe it, but there's plan, do, check, act. If you've ever read W. Edwards Deming, actually he got that from Schuhart. But anyway, this is stuff that goes back way, decades and decades. All right, and you're in a really good spot because you're in a learning, you're in an environment where you can learn a lot, and you can get guidance to investigate the really important stuff. So from my perspective, learning about Schuhart and Deming and the quality movement and lean and theory of constraints, those things are all, to me, incredibly fascinating. The most popular form of Agile, if we're talking buzzword bingo, the most popular form of Agile is called Scrum. And you've probably heard somebody say, I'm a Scrum Master, or they're recruiting for people who could be on an Agile Scrum team. All right, so I'm going to help you just by calling out some of the buzzwords, and I'll show you where they fit in this cycle. Okay? So in Scrum, I'll write that down here. Just so you. In Scrum, they call it sprint planning. You act in this time-bound iteration that they call a sprint. So basically, in Scrum, a sprint is somewhere between 1 and 4 weeks. So imagine you were working on your smart mirror project. You would try to get to the end of your first increment of that product before 4 weeks. Even 1 week is even better. So if you could work very intensely, get to the end of that product increment by the end of 1 week, and get feedback from your customers, then you could work in the next week to improve that. But this is basically the idea. The sprint is a time-boxed iteration. While you're, I'll come back to that. At the end of the sprint, you have a retrospective. This is that formal learning opportunity for the members of your team to come together, analyze what went well, how did we do the work, what didn't go so well, how could we improve, and then you refine your plan in a thing called a product backlog. So you remember we had that list of features for the smart mirror? This is what we're talking about. All those features that are part of your product backlog, that's where it all goes, and it's prioritized. The person whose responsibility to prioritize all of those features and analyze customer demand, they're called product owner. And even if you're working in the context of your club, you could say all of your club members are stakeholders. The person whose responsibility it is to analyze all of your stakeholders' needs and wishes and aspirations for the club, that's your product owner. The person who facilitates this process and makes sure that it all runs smoothly, that's your Scrum Master. Maybe that's your, maybe that's your Chief Operating Officer or your Vice President, or however you guys organize things. But the basics of Scrum are here. There's sprint planning. You organize things in a sprint. You have a retrospective. You organize it in a prioritized product backlog where the most valuable things are at the top and the least valuable things are at the bottom. Now, there's one other element of Scrum that's become really popular and sticky, and you pretty much find this in every work environment. This is on a daily basis. You work with your team members, and you have a very short meeting called a daily Scrum, or a daily stand-up. And you can imagine, it's called a daily stand-up because it's held standing up. So you have a quick 15-minute meeting called a daily stand-up. Okay, so this 15-minute daily stand-up is really popular because you get a lot of information in a short period of time. You say, what did I do yesterday to help the team meet the goal of the sprint? What am I going to do today that's going to help advance the work? And are there any impediments or obstacles that I'm facing? That's it. Everybody on the team goes around, answers three basic questions. And that's it. So the benefit of that is it eliminates or reduces the need for extra meetings, and it gets everybody on the same page very quickly. Now, let me make sure that I've covered off the basics. There's some other improvements that have been made on Scrum over time. This notion of you have a grooming session or a pre-planning session, which is meant to help clarify the product backlog. Sprint planning, sprint, daily Scrum, daily work retrospectives. I talked about the roles. I'll put them up here just so that you know what the roles are. Okay. Again, the three roles in Scrum are Scrum Master, Product Owner, and Team Member. So where is Chief Architect? Where is Tester? Where is Java Developer? Yeah. The thing behind Scrum is an assumption that team members work best together when they're all equal. So if you may be like super uber primo architect or whatever, you tear up your business card, and when you go in the team space, you're a team member. Your job is to help the team meet their goals. So what I think is really special in this context for you, and the reason why I'm here, is to help you get a picture on developing some skills that I think, I mean, this is what IBM is trying to put out there, is that what matters is capabilities and capacities, skills and the ability to bring those skills to bear on solving problems. It's not degrees or accolades, right? It's what you know, what you can do. And so one of the things that's really nice about an agile work environment is that it's agnostic of what your job title is. It's what you bring to bear. And so I think when you look at jobs, it's clearly everywhere, all over IBM. Regardless of the level of skill, it's injected in between the lines that we need people to behave with agility in the workplace, who can see the end goal, which is to produce, some meaningful, valuable output for clients and stakeholders and customers, and not get caught up in get caught up on your job title and what you're entitled to do on a project. It's more about what can you bring to bear. So anyway, stump the chump time. I probably talk way too much, but let me just recap. These are the basic elements of an agile approach to working. We can dive deeper into all of these if you want to, and we can talk in more detail about anything that's important to you. These are, I tried to call out some of the popular words or the jargon from this agile way of working as a way to kind of help to demystify and make it a little bit more reasonable for you to start picking up and applying. Really, you can even apply it to your own work in the club on this project or another project. So, I'm here to help you to help you build whatever context or skills you want. And sorry, 16 minutes I'm talking. I tried to do it in 15, but. So what questions do you have about Agile?
So, what does it take to be?
Can you do me a favor also?
Yeah.
Tell me your name so I can.
Roger.
Hey, Roger. Thanks.
So what does it take to be a Scrum Master exactly?
That is a great question. Does anybody else want to know the answer? Is that curious? Okay, cool. Just trying to get. It's a valuable question. So, what it takes to be a Scrum Master is about $1,200 and to stay awake in a 2-day class.
Okay. This is like become certified Scrum Master.
That's exactly what it's called. Certified Scrum Master, CSM. It's a credential. It's offered by the Scrum Alliance. I have a lot of friends that are certified Scrum trainers. That's their well-being is offering these classes and teaching people about Scrum. And it has a very the course is actually very good. It's a very good course for learning Scrum and exactly what the components of Scrum are. But here, the thing I want to help you come away with is that what really matters is not the TLA, the 3-letter acronym, and being able to say you've stayed awake through a 2-day class. What really matters is the skills that you can bring to bear. And so if you understand the Scrum framework, and let me tell you, Scrum is covered in there's 200 books on the subject. And there's only so many ways that you can say this, say these basic concepts, but it's still not that easy for everybody to get. And I think that's because a lot of stuff has been piled on top of it, including how do I get a job doing this, being a Scrum Master. So my advice to you, if you want to get a job being a Scrum Master, is just be a Scrum Master. So you've got a project, like the Smart Mirror project, or the club website, or a hackathon. Be the process champion for that event, for that project. And that's exactly what the Scrum Master is. The Scrum Master understands Scrum. They know the basic rules. Like, for example, they know that the daily stand-up is 15 minutes, and that's it. And then the Scrum Master would know, okay, well, if this has gone more than 15 minutes, we're into 16, 17 minutes, then this is how I can diplomatically, end this conversation and move things back to the right place. That's something that a Scrum Master does. Or knowing that the product backlog should be prioritized. That's one of the rules of Scrum. That's something that a Scrum Master knows. So you got your feature list for the smart mirror. Work with the product owner to make sure that it's prioritized. That's being a Scrum Master. And that's my advice to you is, if you want to get the taste of what it's like to be a Scrum Master, just do it. You can learn Scrum in 15 minutes, like you just did, right? Like Scrum is really very simple. Now, what makes Scrum difficult is trying to put this into context in a big, complicated organization, right? Which I've done as an Agile coach. Part of my job has been helping organizations transition from that waterfall style of working to this more iterative and incremental fashion. And there's a lot of complexity in organizations that that make it hard to apply such a simple framework. But yeah, so to go back to the question, how do you be a Scrum Master? It's basically there's the doing it, and then there's having that on your LinkedIn profile. And you can get that on your LinkedIn profile very simply just by paying some money and going and taking a class. It's a great class. Actually, most of the certified Scrum trainers offer great classes, and it'll be a great experience. But at the same time, I don't think personally that it's required in order to do the other thing, which is more important, being able to do it.
But you learn a lot from it, right?
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah, certainly. And most trainers these days use experiential learning techniques, and you'll do simulations and games. You'll build build something with Lego, and and then you'll iterate on it, and so yeah, the classes are good, but at the same time, you can bring all that to bear with a simple, like the Scrum Guide, the official document on what Scrum is. The Scrum Guide I think it's 14 pages. It's very, very simple. You go to scrumguides.org, download the latest Scrum Guide, which describes what Scrum is. It's written by the people who founded Scrum. Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland. Ken was one of those people who signed the Agile Manifesto. Anyway, that's the tie-in. It's a good question. There's also a class called the Certified Scrum Product Owner. It's also a 2-day class. But tell me an organization, that will hire somebody that just has a 2-day class and tell them, hey, be the manager of my product. That is not, nobody's taking a chance on that. You have to have some bona fide, business analysis skills, some real true ability, tried and tested abilities in the marketplace to be able to call yourself like the manager of a product, right? But the Certified Scrum Product Owner is basically about learning what is Scrum and how to prioritize the product backlog. Yeah. What other things come to mind?
Is there more like an advanced level on each things that you described? Like, is there different tiers? Like the first positions is easy, and the second level is required a lot more advanced experience, I would say.
So the Scrum Alliance has been working on that. It's been for a long time that the 2-day class was sort of their standard. And they envisioned it to be kind of like a taster, You would take the 2-day class, and then you would really get interested in Scrum. And then the next level up is like, you've been applying Scrum for a year, and then there's another level of certification at that point. I've noticed recently on their website that they had made some changes to the basic structure of their certification model, and I'm not a certified Scrum trainer, so I don't know. I'm not in the loop on all their latest changes. I've intentionally not gone that route, because what I think is more important is the skills and the capabilities, and I think learning the concepts and then applying it, you learn so much more than just picking it out of a book. And That's what, actually, I think, to tie it back to what IBM is envisioning for the new collar jobs of the future, is you're in this great learning environment because you're developing the skills and the capabilities that you'll need in the marketplace, and companies like IBM, I think, really recognize that not everybody needs a PhD or a master's degree or a 4-year bachelor's or whatever in order to bring real value to the company. And so, what I did before coming here was I just quickly looked on IBM's career page, just to see the kind of things that that need agility. And it's pretty much every job. I wrote down a bunch that I'm not technical, and actually I wish if I could do it again, I would be right in your shoes. Maybe someday I will be getting skills in computer science. But so these are just a few of the ones that popped up as saying that they needed Agile, or to operate with agility, or to understand Scrum, or the basic frameworks of doing product development in an Agile way. One's application developer, and then it listed just a ginormous list of skills, like in software development languages. I wish, I think there are so many words that I can't even remember them all. Java was one of them. Systems administrator, project manager, software engineer, and then these are the fields: cybersecurity, cloud computing, cognitive business, and digital design. So I mean, it seems like there's a huge arena of opportunities for people with the right mix of skills and capabilities, and it can be in any number of fields. And so just being able to come at those fields with the mindset of agility, of working towards refining something of value based on feedback from real users, and doing it quickly, like that is, yeah, it's huge. And so if you're able to do that and bring that to bear on any challenge, and you get your experience here in the club, I think that that's a really great way to go.
What is the average timeline on a certain project at IBM? Quote unquote, like a small project. I'm not talking about like a huge developed.
I really don't know. Sorry. I mean, I've only been at IBM for 6 months, and the place that I'm working in is actually in talent acquisition. And the project that I've been working on, we're working in 2-week sprints. We have a very small project team. There's basically 3 of us. It's a very small project team, and our project is developing e-learning content.
Do you test it on each level? Do you test them? You assign certain people to test, or is there a group that tests that certain project?
So our particular project is it's e-learning content, and I'm not doing any software development. Actually, there's no coders on my project. What we're developing is, like, our end product is material for helping people to learn. And the way that we test it in the marketplace is basically we develop some module where we're trying to train people in a concept, and then we get it out to a group of early users and
Do you
say.
release that more like? Or
No, it's all internal.
In-house test.
It's all internal. Yeah, it's all in-house. So we say, we'll release this to a group of 4 or 5 people and say, hey, what are your feedback? What do you give us your insights? And then we iterate on that training module, and then we get more feedback, and it's steamrolls.
The project. Yes.
Yeah, and we do it. We rapidly iterate, and then when the training module is complete, we release it. And again, it's all internal. Eventually, maybe someday we'll all go public, and you'll be like, I remember there was that guy from IBM that time, and he was talking about this thing.
This is a very basic question, but what were your working habits like in college?
Oh, no.
I'm just curious.
That's a good question. It's a fair question. My background, I studied music education for 3 years, and then I went to advertising and communications. Oh, it's advertising, mass communications, and public relations. I was in West Texas, so it was a small school. I did that for a year. Then I went to marketing for a semester, which I bombed. And then I took time off of school for about a year and a half. And then when I went back to school, I went for international studies, which was, you know, very general. It was an interdisciplinary degree that I could make myself. And I studied sociology, anthropology, political science, and international relations, and made my own degree, basically. I mean, the degree is real, but you know, I bounced around a lot, and I got exposed to a huge number of things. And then after university, I got, you know, finally got my Bachelor of Arts. And after that, I did a year in magazine circulation. Then I did a year in healthcare, and then I did 2 years doing community relations for McDonald's restaurants in Canada. And then after that, so I mean, I bounced around a lot. And then I got laid off, and somebody was like, I know a guy, he needs some marketing help. He teaches this thing called Scrum. And I was like, what? That sounds too wishy-washy for me. It sounds really strange. And he was like, no, it's a really big thing. It's going to be huge. And I was like, all right. Well, I'll go listen. And so I talked to this guy, and he said the best way to learn, the best way to learn Scrum is to take my class, the 2-day class that I had to stay awake in. That was it. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna take your free class. And he said he would comp me the class, and then if I liked it, then I could pitch to him what I could do for him in terms of marketing. That's how I learned Scrum. Like, I started absolutely from scratch with no software development experience, complete liberal arts background. You know, and there's a lot of times where I'd have been, really would have liked to have had some technical chops, being able to like even like knowing that Raspberry Pi is abbreviated RPi, like that was I learned that today, like that's cool. So I'm envious of you in the club for what you bring to bear. No, my study habits were atrocious. I mean, so there's, what can I say? I mean, I squeaked by. Late nights, you know, writing essays in the library, that's pretty much it. I wish I could say I really got it figured out.
So for the people at IBM, do you recommend us still, obviously software engineering, for example, that's a really good major. So when you see that around, do you see, how do you see the emotion in people when they're working on projects? Are they stressed out, or are they happy?
You know, what I see, and this is maybe I'm just maybe I just see the good things because I'm an Agile coach, and I kind of come in and I talk about hey, we're gonna reflect on what happened. You know, hey, let's get together and let's gather some data about our feelings about the last 2 weeks. You know,
Yeah.
we're always talking about how do we retrospect and get a little deeper, scratch below the surface and find out how can we work better, and I find it's very empowering. So the people, when I'm around people, I feel like they're bringing their A game. They're bringing their very best because they want they want to see that the thing that they're building is beneficial and valuable, but they're really in touch with their customers, right? The objective. Remember when we were talking about user-centered design? It's like putting real people at the center of the stuff you're building, right? You ask them, hey, do you like this weather? Do you like this weather feature, or or not? Is this the thing that adds to your day, or not? So I mean, I find the people that I work around to be very happy. That's cool. Yeah.
As an intern at IBM, what is the minimum requirement?
Oh, sorry, I don't actually know the answer to that. Unfortunately, I don't even know how you get an internship. What I do encourage you all to do is pursue it. I just don't know how. I would imagine it starts with looking on the IBM careers page, and then I don't know what to do next. One thing I do know that is kind of cool on the IBM careers page is they've got Watson, our cognitive Maestro, you can actually put information, and Watson will help you identify opportunities. You can even say just things that you're interested in, and Watson will spit out like any number of jobs that are available to you, just based on skills. I tested it, and Watson was like, off the charts, you should be in marketing. Look at these jobs. And I was like, maybe I would go back to marketing someday. But of course I'm loving what I'm doing now. Unfortunately, that's all I can. Yes, sir.
So if I understood correctly, you said you were in talent acquisition. And so as an individual interested in putting my best foot forward at IBM, what are the items that a person reviews that you can see Scrum involved in other than projects? How is this identified? What are the key factors that you're looking for when you're looking at these applicants?
I don't have a lot of experience in recruiting. I mean, I'm just new to the field. But I have gotten to spend some time with recruiters as I've been trying to learn about HR agility. And it's kind of opened my eyes about what recruiters' pain points are when it comes to applicants and how do they find people that are really a good fit. One of the things that I think stands out for a recruiter is when somebody has actually done something. They have something to show for it that to back up their claims of experience. So recruiters they're masterful at finding what people have been up to. It's not just what's on LinkedIn. They'll search your name and look for, do you have a resume website? Do you have a place? Have you contributed to GitHub? Do you have a repository out there with or portfolio of your stuff? So those are also, they add to
I understand that, but I also understand that historically, if you send a resume in, it's going to initially get 1 or 2 seconds. If you don't catch an eye, it goes right into file 13.
Yeah.
So what are these things that we should be focusing on to include Agile? Yeah, I understand your projects, but we're also talking entry-level position here.
Yeah.
So other than the club, a lot of the average student isn't going to have a lot to contribute those categories.
I was thinking about that on the way over. Like, what would I do if I was trying to, get the attention of a recruiter? If I was new to the field and I was trying to get an entry-level position, what would I do to get attention? And I realized that that's the wrong question. See, the thing is, recruiters, they do have that dilemma of 1,000 resumes to fill for, there's one job to fill and they've got 1,000 resumes and no time to look through everything, right? And so, you can search and, have keywords and certain things get scored and it gets popped up to the top of the list. But that's actually, I think that's a lot less efficient. What I think recruiters do more so today is they like to find people. And they find people based on what they're actually doing. And so I don't think it can be undersold that your skills and the capabilities that you're building, and even in the context of the club, is that, in fact, if I put it on, if I was a customer of your club and you were interviewing me, what I would want to see from your club is a way that you showcase and promote your members. The stuff that, I don't know what's on your club page, but if you had a picture of all of your projects, profiles of your members, pictures of when you all got together and you were in the computer lab at 2 o'clock in the morning and you got pizza boxes strung everywhere, and then you've got this thing that you created at the end of the day that all of you can take credit for. To me, if I were recruiting, that sells me on your skills and abilities because it shows me that you've done something. It's not so much like, did your resume float to the top of the pile? It may, and you may give a great interview, and in which case, I would probably want to pursue it and get to know you better and all that stuff. But the recruiters that I talk to, they seem really much more impressed with people who are bold and ambitious and just put their stuff out there. But I'm just going based on my impressions. Yeah, I mean, I would encourage you to take credit for the stuff that you've done. Put it out there for people to see. Make sure that you have a LinkedIn profile, a blog, and the club website points to those things. I think those are great.
So with the concept of putting things out there for recruiters to see, I'll give you an example. I worked for a company, an e-commerce company, and migrated the store from Magento open source to Shopify Plus and handled all of the little tweaks and improvements over the course of time. I haven't been with that company in 2 years, so I'm not responsible for what's happened with the website since I left. How do I put something like that out there?
I don't know. To me, I think that's a story that, that story comes out in a conversation. And what you want is to get that conversation with the recruiter so that you can tell that story. You can say, the things that I did led up to this, and I'm really, I'm proud of the results up to that. And I think recruiters get that. I mean, people, I think just intuitively, we know that you develop skills and capabilities just over time as through the experiences and things you get exposed to, and you get to keep those things. They don't go away just because the project is moving in another direction, right? Your experiences are your own. So the objective then is to be able to tell that story to a recruiting, and ultimately not even to the recruiter, but to the hiring manager. And the hiring manager, gets to say, hey, I want to give this person a shot. So I don't know. I think it's more about making sure that you get that opportunity to tell the story.
It's that first step, though. That's the trick. Is how do you get to that spot in order to tell the story? Because I know a handful of us here have extensive backgrounds. Some of us were military, some of us did other things, and yet no recruiters ever.
Can I take a little off-ramp? Just one quick question. Other military folks? Cool. All right. There's this thing I've been trying to learn about, which is another four-step called observe, orient. I think it's observe, orient, decide, act, or...
Oh, the OODA loop.
Yeah, ODA. That's, what is it?
I think it's OODLE.
So thanks for looking it up. I was just reading Jeff Sutherland's book called, his most recent book about Scrum, and he talks about when he was an Air Force pilot, and he said, when we were inventing Scrum, we basically saw this same pattern, what they taught us in the military, observe, orient, whatever it is, and he said,
Yeah, observe, orient, decide, and act. And this is a little complicated thing,
but yeah, the basic idea is, and then there's this notion of an after-action review.
after-action reports.
So that's what underlies this concept of a retrospective, was his own experience doing after-action reports, analyzing the information that came in, and trying to help that refine the way that they're going to execute in the future. Anyway, I mean, to drive back on, I think actually a lot of the skills that the people in the military learn are incredibly important and valuable in the context of working in software development, knowing how to work in teams, how to be efficient and reliable. I mean, I think there's huge overlap. So I don't have any really advice except just like admiration. I've often thought like, what would if I were to teach Scrum to a class of folks who were recently out of the military, like what would I teach them? Because I'm like, this is just another set of words to stuff that you already know. And it's actually, I mean, I think a lot of us get it, whether we've had military experience or any other kind of thing. Like a lot of the basics about an agile way of working are things that we just have encountered, right? Yeah, you should plan before you act. Anyway, so other questions? You want to take this in another direction?
Yeah, kind of back to Scrum. Like, what's the difference between like Scrum, Kanban, and in terms of like different methods?
Okay, so Scrum and Kanban are like cousins, but they kind of come from the same inspiration. There's so I mentioned the Agile Manifesto. So Agile became this umbrella term. But the people who signed the Agile Manifesto, they had all come up with their own methodologies or ways of being Agile. Before they called it Agile, they just had their own names for it. Some of them called it like a lightweight methodology or a flexible, a flexible framework or something like that. So some of the Agile methodologies, we talked about Scrum because that's like the most popular one. Scrum has basically become synonymous with Agile. So when you talk about Agile in companies, for the most part, they're talking about the Scrum framework. But some of the other, there's dynamic systems development methodology, DSDM, there's Crystal, which is a thing that Alistair Coburn invented, and there's all these colors, like there's Crystal Orange framework, and there's Crystal Clear, which is the most agile one and the most applicable. There's a bunch of different frameworks for being agile. Remember that being agile is this set of beliefs, these values and principles that underlie just the way that way software projects should work, or actually the way that a lot of projects should work. Okay, so Kanban, the way to tie that one in. Kanban came about, sorry, excuse my handwriting. Kanban came about basically independently of the Agile umbrella. But Kanban gets associated a lot with Agile because it's dealing in the same subject matter and it deals a lot with the same theory. So remember I talked about Deming and Shubart, right? And Taiichi Ohno, the Toyota production system. Like this is, Kanban is based on 3 simple principles, which is limit work in progress, visualize your workflow, and pull work instead of pushing it. So you basically, what Kanban means is you use this, Kanban literally means signal card. It signal that there's empty capacity by like, hey, let's put up a sign that says we've got capacity to do some work. So this is empty, so the work can flow into it. So anyway, a lot of people like applying Kanban to software work. And it actually makes a lot of sense actually Kanban makes better sense for me in service work, systems administration, some project management, places where the workflow is very clear. Places that, I think a lot of places where they were strictly waterfall before, where they had a very well laid out plan for how software could get developed, and moving to Kanban is a much more evolutionary approach. Moving to Scrum is like really dramatically different for those work environments. So it's beneficial actually to learn both. And the Kanban, there's a book by David Anderson who sort of coined the Kanban framework theory. So David Anderson is a good author. And there's courses offered by Lean Kanban University, LKU.com, I think, or maybe, yeah, LKU.com. They tend to be a little more robust. We were comparing, if you're comparing it to like what Scrum Certification and the classes that you can get around Scrum, the ones from LKU tend to be more robust, more expensive, harder to get, but meaningful too. I think all this stuff you can learn from books and from applying it to your work. At least, I wouldn't say that I'm that bright, but I feel like I figured it out, or figured out, you know, for the most part. There's still, I'm still learning a lot, but you know, I got it all from cracking open a book, reading, you know, there's this great book called Agile Retrospectives by Esther Derby and Diana Larson. $20 on Amazon, like it was published in 2006 or 2007, it's still like one of the most popular Agile books. 100 pages, super, super good book. It's all about retrospectives, and you know, you could take that and apply it to anything where you work with a group of people. So, did that answer your question about Kanban and Scrum?
So it feels like it's just kind of like a just put like everything in, or like smooth things you can like realistically accomplish from the backlog into like the to-do list and just clear it out.
That's the basic idea. I mean, like what makes up your sprint plan is the items from your product backlog that you can do. You know,
Within one sprint.
take these two, put them in your sprint backlog, and work on those two things during the course of your sprint. And then when you finish them, you're supposed to finish by the end of the sprint. But getting to done, you know, by the end of your sprint is like liberating. It makes it feel great, but also it gives you something that you can evaluate with your customer. So that's the basic idea.
If any of you want to come get some pizza, because we only have about 5 minutes left, come get it.
I cannot believe I've stood in between you and pizza. I was like chowing down the whole time. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. If you want to reach out to me, feel free. David D. Parker on LinkedIn. I'll put it up here, or I'll put my Twitter handle, whatever. I don't have business cards. Like, pretty lame like that.
It was actually a really talk. I enjoyed it. A lot of people working here since Scrum.
Well, because we sat in the front row, so you can't really sleep on it.
Yeah, just like,
See the red light?
Yeah, it's my lifeblood.
It literally has one every single meeting.
last Scrum Master.
What branch?
I did 9 years.
Or so. There's the Marine Corps, what's it called, the Marine Corps Service?
Yes.
So the book that everybody, yeah. It was the training was sorry.
Yeah, but now it's,
That's right. Well, that's saying a lot.
It's kind of like
Don't have to be very well
like
respected.
scanning
Like as I've been learning about Agile and thinking about frameworks and how people apply about making things more Agile. U.S. military is very staunch.
Did you like it?
Yeah, it was good. I took a lot of,
Most exciting
I wanted to ask what
stories
your email was, so I can
was, you know, during the
share like the
change
notes.
from
Oh, yeah.
traditional military to, you know, hyper local engagement. You know, when the Marines
I
were
did,
here
I
to
did.
like, you know, like, I can't remember what the
Just
series
totally it all
was,
out.
but it was like that type of example.
I don't know. I'm not sure too sure that like compare you. I think it just kind of integrates the concepts into your head so you can actually apply
there was a
them.
thing about
You know?
Instead of playing.
It's just like you make changes after you say the problem.
Are you going on Thursday? The GGC? Or are you still on meetings at that time? Adam hasn't been sending out emails, so I don't know.
Well, if I see him, I'll ask him.
I should see him today. I have to be, I have a board meeting, which is slightly irritating.
Yeah. Hi. I
I was like,